Hello, good morning. Just wanted to go through a quick video here as part of my proposal to show you exactly how I would make sure we were following best practices in order to customize the Bootstrap CSS framework modules. And so this could be any type of component. We may need to customize the CSS that ultimately gets compiled from SCSS, or we may have to kind of flavor some of the JavaScript too to give those interactions a different feel. So this is what I'd like to show here. You can see that I am running on localhost on port 3000. And so this is a Bootstrap starter screen here that I've installed locally on my computer and got it up and running. It's being served right now. And so one of the things I'd like to say is that there's two ways that you typically will bring Bootstrap source code into your application. The first one is through a script tag in the head of your HTML document, or the entry point for your application, which is going to be an HTML document. And so that's one way. The second way is using a package manager like NPM is common for Node.js applications, JavaScript applications. There's advantages and disadvantages to each. The major advantages to bringing it in as a script is that it's quick and easy to get started tinkering around with the framework. The disadvantage is that that script runs, it makes a network call at runtime. So that means after your HTML document has been loaded from the server, it has to make a network call to get the compiled or minified source code for Bootstrap. And Bootstrap's both CSS and JavaScript. So while it's not in a compiled form, it's not huge, it does take up some time for that initial load. The other major disadvantage is you don't really have the Bootstrap source code available to you because it's compiled, and you can get in through the dev tools and you can look at the source code, but it's not a great experience trying to see what the source code is actually doing. The other way is through a package manager, and that's the way I've chosen because you get the source code, you compile it yourself before you upload your application to the hosting environment or the production environment. And it makes it easier to see the source code. Now, I will mention this, regardless of which way you use it, which way you bring Bootstrap into your application, the best practice for customizing Bootstrap still is the same. You don't want to go in and modify the source code. The big reason being because if you modify the source code and they do an update and they change some class names or something, your modifications will no longer be valid. And anytime you reinstall your application, it's going to create a new instance of Bootstrap in some cases. Sometimes you have to blow away your node modules folder and reinstall all those dependencies. Well, then your customizations will be lost. So what we're going to do, and I'm going to go to the code to show you here, is just two simple customizations. The first thing I'll show you is that what I've done, I've got this very simple HTML document here that is what we just saw in the browser. And what I have done, I've created a file in the CSS folder. I'm going to close my node modules up here. In my CSS or SCSS folder called overrides SCSS. And this is where we are going to put any of our customizations. Now, for the simplicity of this example, I'm using one file, but really you'd probably want to create separate files for different modules that you were customizing just to keep things clean. But in this case, we just have one file. It's called overrides, and we are referencing CSS overrides.css, not SCSS. The reason for that is because the SCSS gets compiled. And when it does, it gets added to a normal CSS file. And that's what we have to reference. The browser doesn't know how to handle SCSS, but it does know how to handle CSS, of course. So we've got a link here to our customized style sheet. And here is the customized style sheet. But let me go back to the browser for a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's say on our page, we simply want to, we have this toggle off canvas. and it brings out a little side kind of off canvas modal or whatever you'd like to call it. And let's say this header here, we want to change the color of that. Maybe you have a specific brand color that you want that to be. The first thing that I would do is I would determine which CSS property and value need to be changed to make that change. So I'm going to open up my developer tools here, and I'm simply going to find that part of the HTML. When I do, I can clearly see it's a div. It has a class of off-canvas header, and that and everything inside that header. So I'm going to test this out and see, okay, if I change the style of this, can I get it to change the color? And so I'm just going to add right here in my dev tools, I'm going to add a background color, and let's just make it blue. And I can see immediately it doesn't show up very good against that black text. So we'll do whatever that color is. You can see there that we are able to change the color. So now I know the property and the value that need to be changed. So I'm going to actually just copy this, and I will go back into the code here. And so you can see in the overrides, I have already done this work before the video, right? I made sure that everything was going to work. And so if I uncomment this code, and instead of red, I place what I had, and I save this. Now, remember, we're working with the SCSS file here. And so if I go back to the browser, I've saved this, I go back to the browser and I refresh, you won't see the change. It's back to what its default was. That's because we actually need to run the compiler. So in order to do that, I run everything in Windows Subsystem for Linux. So I'm just going to use the bash command here, npm run CSS, which compiles all the CSS. Now there's a watch command too that gives you the hot reloading, but for this example, we'll just compile it manually here, wait for that to finish. And then if we go back now, we refresh, and we see the color has changed. And so this is saved in our source code. And it's our file that we control. And so we don't have to worry about Bootstrap making updates or having to reinstall Bootstrap libraries and having our changes lost. That's the CSS change. Now, the JavaScript is a little bit of a different situation with Bootstrap. You could certainly modify the source code. And the way to do that would be you would go up into your node modules, and you would find, actually the file is referenced here. So this is referencing the exact location in my node modules folder where my all my Bootstrap JavaScript is located, and it's in a .min, so it's going to be very minimized. It's all going to be on one line. It's not ideal for modifying, but they would also have a JavaScript file that has the unminified version, so the kind of source code version. And we could certainly pull code out of that, and we could place it in this main.js, and we could modify it as we'd like. That's complicated, but that does allow you complete flexibility to change Bootstrap's source JavaScript code. However, I think in 80% of the cases, it's much more feasible and realistic to just use Bootstrap's custom event listeners. So for every Bootstrap module that uses JavaScript, they have an infinite tense and a past tense event listener. And so what I have done is here, I have kind of created some JavaScript code that I'm going to uncomment. And just briefly to explain what this is doing, this document add event listener, this first one on line 11, this is just making sure that the DOM has loaded, because in order for any JavaScript to find HTML elements, you have to make sure that the DOM has successfully loaded. Technically, in this example HTML document, I don't need to worry about that because I'm not bringing in the DOM, or I'm not bringing in the main.js script here in the head. I'm bringing it in at the very bottom of the HTML. So this main.js won't run any code until the document, the HTML document that is, has already rendered in the browser and has been evaluated. So we don't need to technically worry about that, but just for information. The off canvas element, this is just grabbing the element that I want to listen to. So Bootstrap is going to fire off some events and I can hook into those events, but I do have to tell my JavaScript which element is going to fire those events off. And so this is all documented in Bootstrap 5's documentation, but it's very similar for Bootstrap 4. Lower than 4, I'm not sure how similar it is. My guess would be it's pretty similar, but I don't know for sure with 3 or anything like that. So what we have here is we have some event listeners, and I am listening for a show. So this event will fire off when the element is shown, or when right before it's shown, and then the next one is shown, and so that one is after it's completely shown. And then we have to hide, a hide and a hidden event listener as well. So we'll watch this happen in real time. I'm going to save this file. There's no compile step here because this JavaScript file that I'm working out of is not being compiled to anything other than JavaScript. And I'm loading this file in right through my HTML document. So no compile step needed here. But if we get rid of this, and then I'm going to get rid of my dev tools here so we can see a little bit more clearly. And I open it up. It didn't work. Of course it didn't. We are going to do a hard refresh. There we go. Okay. I needed to hard refresh. So one of the reasons that I like to use incognito mode is to avoid some caching issues. But even in incognito mode, there's still files that are cached because they don't want to have, you don't want the browser making network calls to grab files that it already has. The issue comes in is sometimes when a file changes, the browser doesn't recognize the change because the file name is still the same. And that's what happened here. It had cached the old JavaScript file, even though I had it saved locally. The browser wasn't picking that change up. So nothing more was needed than a hard refresh. And so now you can see when I toggle the canvas out before it opens, my alert shows up. After it opens, my next hook for the shown alert shows up. And then on close, it's saying it's about to be hidden. And then when it's hidden, the last hook, the event is picked up for that last hook. And so in brief, that is the best practice for making customizations to both the CSS and the Bootstrap modules and the JavaScript as well. So I hope this has been informative. Please contact me if you're interested in employing me for this job. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to chat with you about it. Thanks a lot.